All right, boys and girls, today we're going to be continuing to study series and connections. So we're going to be looking at chapter books and poems, and specifically looking at how one chapter is connected or related to the next chapter. Our objective or I can statement for today is I can explain how a series of chapters, scenes, or stanzas fits together to provide the overall structure of a particular story, drama, or poem. And we will also be looking at the meaning of some words based on how they're used in context. But specifically today, we're really going to be looking at how series of chapters are connected and how they help with the overall structure of a story. Okay. Because this week we're going to be working on poems as well, I just want to remind you of some of the figurative language that we've learned. We've learned about similes, metaphors, personification, and idioms. If you want to pause the video, or you should pause the video and watch so that you can read the different definitions as well as examples of the academic vocabulary. Okay. Today, I am going to post a segment of chapter 2 because of Mr. Terror. We read chapter 1 already. And I want you to hear chapter 2 so that we can have a discussion about how this chapter connects to the first chapter, or how the first two chapters are related. Okay? Pause the video, go back and click the link that says because of Mr. Terup chapter 2. Okay. Today I want to teach you that readers explain how a series of chapters fit into a story to create meaning. Okay. Readers do this by pausing after each chapter, jotting about the events, and then asking themselves, how is this chapter working with the other chapters? Or how does this connection add to the meaning of the story? And readers do this in order to determine how the structure of chapters affect the overall meaning of a story. Okay. Let me show you something. Can I show you what I mean? I started to reread because of Mr. Terror, because I really wanted to see how each chapter fits together to help me better understand the entire story. I knew that the author left clues for me along the way. So, remember in chapter 1, we learned about Peter. Peter seemed to be a student who tried to outsmart the teacher. He kept pretending to go to the bathroom to waste time until Mr. Terup joked with him. So readers, after I reread this, I paused and jotted down my thinking. When I was rereading this chapter, it has really made me think about not just Peter, but Mr. Terup. How might this chapter be helping me to understand a larger meaning hidden in this chapter? Well, this chapter showed me that Peter realized, 1, Mr. Terup was unlike most teachers who would have scolded him for his behavior. And number 2, he had a good sense of humor. This changed Peter's perspective on Mr. Terup and school in general. This chapter seems to set up as a reader for me to see how Mr. Terup connects with his students. This line here really helped me come to this conclusion. In the text it said, this year, for the first time in my life, I started thinking school could be fun. So Mr. Mr. Terup is really changing Peter's perspective about school. Okay, so maybe the overall is how Mr. Terup as a teacher is going to change how students think about different things in their life. Now let's see if something similar happens in chapter 2. Let's go back and reread chapter 2. Now if you paused the video earlier and clicked on the link, you heard chapter 2. But if not, this is the point where you want to pause this video, click on the link so you can hear chapter 2 because of Mr. Terup. Okay. At first glance, Jessica's chapter seemed very different from Peter's chapter. Remember, as a reader, it was important for me to pause and think about what the chapter might mean for the overall text. I read this chapter thinking to myself, how is this chapter working with the other chapters? How does this connection add to the meaning of the story? A few moments into this chapter, it really stood out to me as I was reading. Jessica seemed to have a very different personality than Peter. She's nervous. I started thinking, this chapter doesn't fit with the other chapter at all. When I noticed the section right here that said, well, this is my first day too, so I guess we'll try to figure things out together, he said. My smile grew. Readers, I kept reading, thinking about Mr. Terup's impact on Jessica in this moment. When I got to the end, I jotted, Jessica feels nervous about going to a new school, but Mr. Terup is friendly and helps her see that they are all in it together. This changes Jessica's perspective, and she says at the end that things will be okay. Do you see the connection now? How Mr. Terup is changing the students' perspective of what they think about school. Okay, wow. I think I have a little bit of information now to start thinking about how the chapters work together. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Thumbs up on your chest if you're noticing it also. In both of my jottings, I see that Mr. Terup did something to change the perspective of each student, even though they were both very different. This is my theory. Now, we need to see if the pattern continues. If so, that is huge for us starting to understand how all the chapters are working together to help us understand the meaning of the story. Do you see how I read a chapter, jotted my thinking about what happened, and then asked myself, how is this chapter working with the other chapters? How does this connection add to the meaning of the story? It is important that we do this work as readers and develop theories so that we understand the text as a whole. Okay, now it's your turn. And I want you, independently, I want you to read your chapter book on Epic that I've assigned to you. I want you to remember to read a chapter. I want you to pause, jot what happened, and then I want you to ask yourself, how is this chapter working with the other chapters? So don't just try to read through everything. Read your chapter, pause, jot down events that happen, and then go to the next chapter, and then do the same thing. Read, jot down the events, look for similarities or how they may be connected. Okay? All right. Remember, today and every day when you're reading chapter books, that you can pause after each chapter, Jot down the events that occurred and ask yourself, how is this chapter working with the other chapters? How does this connection add to the meaning of the story? Readers, do this in order to understand how the whole text works together to create a bigger meaning.